The demobilization plan has 5 key sections: general information and guidelines, responsibilities, release priorities, release procedures, and travel information. In the given scenario, important pieces of information were left out of all of these key sections, so that way we can identify them and learn from them. From Section 1, General Information and Guidelines, it doesn't talk about the importance of communicating surplus resources or the extra stuff that you may have at the end of an incident. It also doesn't talk about the goal to be home by 2200 hours or 10 p.m. And most importantly, it doesn't mention that 8 consecutive hours of off-duty time are necessary to be rested and ready for the next operational period. And this can be found in Section 23, 1.1, R5 of the Mobilization Guide. All chiefs, supervisors, and leaders are to be briefed by the demobilization unit before leaving to include method of travel, itinerary, and manifests or a log of their destinations. Departure and arrival times are to be relayed through expanded dispatch, and performance ratings or evaluations are required for trainees, outstanding performance, deficient performance, and, well, by request. Now, this may seem like extra stuff, but it's actually very important because not only do you need to address poor performance, but you also need to recognize and congratulate great performance, which is very motivating for the future. Section 2, Responsibilities, is completely blank, and this is really, boils down to accountability because people need to know what they are responsible for and what tasks and objectives they need to carry out. And this needs to be conveyed for every unit leader. Now, I've got a ton of bullets here for what the responsibilities for each unit leader are. I'm just going to go through 1 or 2 for each. So the demobilization unit leader, prepare the demobilization plan with input from the TNF center manager or expanded dispatch. And let's pick another one here. Monitoring the demobilization process and making necessary adjustments in the process to maintain an orderly and safe release of all resources and ensure accurate and timely flow and release of information. Incident commander, establish incident release priorities in concert with the geographic area coordinator. Safety officer, identifying any special safety considerations for the demobilization plan. Planning section chief, review and approve the demobilization plan. Logistics, I'll pick 2 from here because it's rather long. Ensuring through the supply unit that all non-expendable property items are returned or accounted for prior to release. And the second one, let's go with ensuring through the communications unit that all communications equipment has been returned or accounted for. Finance section chief, completion of all time and equipment reports for released resources. And operations section, review the demobilization plan, and liaison officer, providing agency-specific requirements for the demobilization plan. Release priorities. This is the order in which, ideally, resources will be released from the incident. Now, this is specific to each incident. This is not an industry standard. There's not a general blanket rule you can put to all incidents. It really is specific to the resources that you have and how you're using them and how you did use them and what you project your use might be for them in the future. For this incident in particular, number 1 is local government and OES engines. Number 2 is CDF engines. Number 3 is CDF crews. Number 4 is state and local government overhead. Number 5 is Forest Service engines. Number 6 is Forest Service Type 2 crews. And number 7 is federal overhead. Release procedures. Disband strike teams, resource teams, and task forces before the incident commander approves their demobilization. So you have to break up these groups before you send them off to the boss to say, hey, okay, we can let them go now. Demobilization will notify dispatch of tentative releases and get approval, provide a minimum of 24 hours notice, and give ground support adequate time to get transportation together. Now, this sounds like a lot, but basically what it's saying is not every resource has its own way of moving itself from the incident back to its home location. So we may need to provide that service through the ground support team, and we need to give them notice to be able to get everything together. Identify surplus resources, and we talked about this beforehand, but with a particular focus on aviation because this is a bigger operation. To fly a helicopter or a plane, you need a helipad or a landing pad, a runway rather. And pilots, people that are certified to maintain these aircraft, pilot them, maintain them, things like that. And that's a bigger operation than just hopping in a truck, turning a key, and driving down the road. So you need to pay particular attention to things that are going to be moving by air. Advise dispatch of reassigned resources if there are reassignments, And what this is saying is that not every resource is going to be demobilized immediately. It may be shifted to another objective or task, and you want to consider that before just letting it go off scene. If there is no reassignment, then you can demobilize it. And then lastly, when demobilization occurs, resources need to go through a checkout process or a checklist of the different units in order before they can reach that final demobilization step. So resources can't just be let go off the scene by one person or one unit. They need to visit the specific functional areas of the emergency management team to ensure that everything is signed off, all the equipment that goes with that resources or the personnel that's with that team are ready to be released and not be reassigned. And it's basically an accountability log of who said what and who said it's okay for this resource to leave through each step and phase and functional area, as I mentioned before, of the emergency management incident and team. So these areas and these steps that these resources need to go through are communications, ground support, facilities, supply, finance, documentation, and lastly, demobilization. And demobilization is the last step in this, at which point we'll collect and sign off on the ICS Form 221, which is the demobilization checkout, brief the released personnel on the method of travel, schedule, and timeframes, release the resources from the incident base, advise expanded dispatch of estimated time of departure and estimated time of arrival, so when they're leaving the incident and when they're going to return to their home unit, coordinate with the resources unit so that resources status is kept current. So if you have a expendable or usable resource like water or concrete or sandbags, things that as you use them, they go down in value or amount that you have, we need to keep that updated. And coordinate with the security for inspection if required by the incident commander. So this is particularly important for contracted resources or equipment, things that we're going to be accountable to in a financial sense if the resource isn't brought back to its home unit in its original state. And lastly, you have the travel information section. This is important because resources need to be communicated with in terms of who can use them, how they can be used, and you need to have a name and phone number to be able to reach out to the folks that know about the resources and how to use them, how to implement them, and lastly, how to demobilize them. So in the given incident, we are missing the travel information of an incident directory of phone numbers and points of contact.